And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Those of you here for the first time, what brings you here?
I came to a meeting last night. We did, downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. The energy is amazing.
Nice.
Just to learn and practice.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, welcome to the Dharma Bum Temple.
Yeah.
It's a good meeting down there. I saw another hand somewhere. Yeah?
Just finding something there.
Yeah. What was wrong with the old?
Nothing.
Nothing? Well, that's good. Yeah. Anybody else here for the first time? Those of you who keep coming back, why do you keep showing up? What's the point? What's the purpose? What's the reason? Why keep showing up? Yeah.
It's a great meditation.
Meditation, yeah.
Just a reminder to be in the present. That's
Sounds so simple, right?
yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult, should it? No. But it is. Yeah. That's why I do this every day. Yeah. I'm just always talking to myself. You all just happen to be here. What else? Why show up?
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
I'm always happy I came.
Nice. Yeah. Me too. It's a question that I ask probably once every few weeks, just if nothing else, really just reminders for everybody to kind of reflect on why would you show up, if you're brand new, to kind of pay attention to that. We call that kind of beginner's mind, that original intention that said, hey, I'm looking for something new or trying something different, really always reflect on what it was that initially drove you to explore something like this. And for those of you who keep showing up, week in and week out or whatever it is, to also reflect on why you keep showing up, because, on this journey, whatever you want to call it, meditation, Buddhist practice, spiritual path, whatever label you want to give it, it's not always easy. And there are days that are going to be harder than others, and there'll be days where you think like, yeah, all this Pema Chodron, loving kindness, compassion stuff is super easy. And then there's days where you're like screaming and cussing at, your loved ones. So all of that stuff is part of this journey. And so when things get really difficult, and you have days that aren't as, smooth and gentle as you would have hoped, reflect back on why you're doing this practice to begin with. Because very often that helps motivate and inspire you to keep going. Because like I said, there'll be days that are more challenging than others. And those aren't days to throw in the towel and quit. Those are days to just say, I'm just going to keep practicing, I'm going to keep going. Always be patient with yourself, with everything really, with everyone, but specifically what I'm talking to right now is be patient with yourself. That as you go along this journey, whether you're a week in or 6 months in or 20 years in, keep being patient. Don't forget to reflect every so often on, the beautiful and challenging journey that you've had up to this point, and be patient with yourself. So For those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. Feel free to say hello as you are. Somewhere on the screen there's a chat box. We'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things I'll tell you for those who are maybe sitting for the first time or sitting here for the first time with me. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps sliding to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Same thing if you're in a bench or chair, however you're seated. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders, hands be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, just means you need to move. And if you are brand new, you're not trying to empty your thoughts, you're not trying to go blank, you're not trying to think nothing. Your mind will race as much as it always does. I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep or remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to the present moment. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. Eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move, and most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of why your life might be a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so you can then make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. We spend so much time focused on everybody outside of us. And this practice is an opportunity to hold up a mirror and reflect back on yourself, your thoughts, your words, your actions. That's it. That creates your reality. Your thoughts, your words, your actions. This is your karma. This is what you bring into the world. This is not what you get. This is not what you deserve. This is not what goes around comes around. Karma literally means action. And it's generated through body, speech, and mind. What we think, what we say, and what we do. So this practice day in and day out is learning to be mindful and aware of the karma you bring into the world. And that's it. And that just repeats every single day, every moment of your life. That's why this practice is so fun. It creates an opportunity to actually be honest with yourself on, am I thinking kind thoughts? Am I saying kind words? Am I doing kind deeds? Or where many of us spend much of our days, which is the opposite of that. So that's the practice. So with that, I'll pause. For me, really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our time this evening for that. For those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Feel free to say hello as you are, and if you have any questions, put them on the chat box. I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up the questions.
So, kindness. I noticed there's a loop, a cycle that kind of happens for me, where stay in that kindness mindset and flowing, and then something triggers me, and I feel like a wall goes up, and I just steam with anger, frustration. My mind starts racing and going crazy. How do you break that cycle? Or how do you, what's your, besides meditation and daily practice. Is there anything else that?
Yeah. So just to paraphrase the question for those who maybe didn't hear it, you find yourself in the cycle with kindness where you're in this nice rhythm of kindness and then something happens that triggers you, a wall goes up, kindness is gone, and you get kind of stuck there. And so your question is, how do you break that cycle? And what's interesting is, and you said, meditation can help. Meditation really isn't the answer to your question. I'm always a fan of meditation, obviously. It's usually not going to cause more harm. But really, there's a couple ways to look at this. There's, the metaphor I often use that if you have a headache, take 2 Advil, headache goes away, in theory, right? Next day you get another headache, take 2 more Advil, headache goes away. So many of us, with many things in our lives, spend our entire life taking Advil every single day, as opposed to beginning to understand why is the headache occurring. So you can use meditation to calm yourself down and try to lower that wall or shatter that wall every day. That's your Advil. But the question is, ultimately, how do you get to a place where that wall doesn't go up? Make sense so far? And that has nothing to do with meditation. That has to do with understanding that, I know this might come as a shock to you, no one's going to do what you want them to. And no one's going to be the way you want them to be. And the world will not revolve around your desires. I know, I'm surprised, right? I know this is no shock to you because you've been listening to me tell you this for years, right? So the question, which is, okay, so what? So if we realize that the world is not going to do what we want it to, but that still doesn't keep the wall from going up. What keeps the wall from going up is endless compassion for all beings, all time, all space, all directions. And understanding that what you are calling a trigger is just people being who they are and not aligning with who you want them to be. Right? And I'm not only talking about the dude sitting next to you. This is for everybody. Right? I've been doing this literally with them for years. So, as much as I try to pretend I know nothing about anyone, when you've been asking the same question for 8 years, you kind of figure this shit out after a while. But this isn't just about one individual, and I'm always speaking to all of us. The reality is, whether it's one person or multiple people, loved ones, family, friends, things like that, the world is going to do what they're going to do, just like you're going to do what you're going to do. And compassion and wisdom says people are going to be how they are. And that's not a reflection on us. If somebody does something you don't want them, if somebody does something that you don't want them to, that has nothing to do with you. As much as we'd like to think that the world revolves around us, you're not the only one who thinks that way, right? The world is going to do what they're going to do. And them being a certain way towards us or treating us or others a certain way, it's not about you. That's them reflecting their pain, their suffering, their anger, their sadness, their depression, their trauma, whatever it might be. They're just reflecting into the world their heart and their emotions and their pain and their suffering. And we don't like it. So then we spin it, we make it all about us. They hurt me. No, they're hurting. Thus the wall goes up. And when a wall goes up, you know what we can't see on the other side of the wall? Anything. Or anyone. And now we've just locked them on the other side of the wall. Because we're afraid to actually open up and see what's behind the wall. What's behind the wall is a human who's suffering. Always. The answer is compassion for people who are suffering. And the wisdom tells us that the world is never going to do what we want it to. And that's not the end of the world. That's the reality. And in most cases, again, I'm not, for those who may be sitting with me for the first time, I'm not discounting, very heavy, traumatic, real life things that happen. But I don't know, 90% of the things that piss us off throughout the day are probably not that big of a deal. By the next day, you'll have forgotten about it and you'll be on to something else that's pissing you off. There's 10% of things that are very heavy, very serious, very traumatic. So I don't want to minimize those things. But it's the little stuff I'm talking about that if we open up our heart a little bit, maybe we can see and understand and begin to feel what's on the other side of that wall, which is just another living, breathing human being who's doing their best and suffering just like we are. So
speaking of very heavy, very serious stuff, is there a place in Buddhism you seek a balance between letting go of this anger, seeing compassion for this person, but also seeking restitution where there is real crime, real injury?
When you say seeking restitution, what do you mean by that? Expand on that a little bit. I don't want to assume that I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so if somebody commits a crime against you, when
Yeah.
we exist in a system where there's legal repercussions, you can have a lawsuit, something
Yes.
like this. Is there a way that you can exist in the system where you seek that kind of restitution while also harmoniously let go of
Yeah.
this anger? Or would Buddhism say, don't pursue this action, just move on?
Yeah, understood. So the question for those who didn't hear it is there a place in Buddhism, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but is there a place in Buddhist practice where if you're seeking restitution, serious crime, legal, matters, things like that, is there a place in Buddhism where you can seek that, yet still stay calm and peaceful? You didn't use those words, but that's kind of what I'm feeling from you. There's a place for that. It doesn't mean you can get there. Right? So Buddhist practice, again, for those who might be newer to this, is not about not pursuing justice or what's right in your mind. Right? It's not about becoming a doormat, as I often say, and just allowing racial injustice to exist. Racism is not okay. Sexism is not okay. We should fight against these things. And when they become, that or anything becomes a legal matter, and there is crime, and there is physical pain, emotional pain, damage done, feel free to seek all the justice legally that you want. Nothing in Buddhism is going to tell you not to do that. The question is, if you choose that path, can you do that without destroying yourself? So there's a place for all of that. But are you okay to do it? There's nothing wrong, and in Buddhism it's called engaged Buddhism, very much encouraged. People like Thich Nhat Hanh who walked hand in hand with Martin Luther King. Absolutely speak your truth in whatever realm that goes into, and fight for what you believe is just and correct. But do it with love and compassion in your heart, not anger and hatred. So if one chooses to pursue legal matters with a situation and wants to draw something out for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, however long it may take, are you prepared to do that? And that's more of a rhetorical question, obviously. Each situation is different, but nothing in Buddhism is going to tell you, no, do not pursue legal matters. I think it will also create, if you look at Buddhist teachings, an opportunity to reflect on what is the intention, again, not for you to answer right now, but to explore, what is the intention behind pursuing some sort of legal situation? And that could be a whole range of things, from making sure people don't do the same thing again. I spent 21 years volunteering in prisons. I've sat with people who've murdered and raped and done some of the most horrific things, right? And There's a place for people like that. And if we pursue those matters with the intention of keeping other people safe, then that's your intention. If we pursue certain situations just to kind of prove a point or to win some ego battle, then that's your intention. So whatever the intention is, that's why the less I know, the better, because then I don't have to assume I know what's going on. Ask yourself, or one should ask themselves, what's the intention? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Can I tell a short story that relates to this?
Possibly. Are you going to teach this person something, or are you going to share a story?
Short story.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was looking to buy a house, and the realtor, we were driving around, and she showed me a house that she had sold to the first purchaser. It was a custom home. And after he moved in, he had repeated problems with the septic tank system that was built for this custom home. And he got into a lengthy dispute with the builder, never got it settled. And he was already retired with his life, and he died prematurely. And my conclusion, she gave me more detail, but my conclusion was, no septic tank, no house is worth the agony of the lawsuits and the agony that he went through. Try to make it right. It would have been better to sell the house and live somewhere else and live a healthy life. That was a lesson I took from it.
Other questions? There's a question here. It says, how do we work with pride? I've suffered with anxiety for longer than I ever wanted, and it's really impacted my pride and expectations of getting better. Yeah, I think so. There's a teaching in Buddhism referred to as the second arrow, and very often with these emotions that we experience. Could be anger, sadness, depression, whatever it is. Very often there's that first arrow that something hits us and there's anger. So now we sit and we abide in anger. And then all of a sudden time passes and now we're sad because we're still angry. So now we're angry and now we're sad. More time passes and now we're depressed. Now we're depressed because we're sad because we're angry. And so from when that initial arrow hit, which just caused anger, instead of resolving that anger, we just allowed that to kind of spiral into additional emotions that are all these other arrows that are destroying us. And so when you ask this question about suffering with anxiety, and the pride you're having of expecting it to get better, for me, my master always said, don't expect things from anyone or anything ever. And so, if you can, all this stuff is easier said than done, but if you can work on having gratitude and appreciation for the anxiety you have, I know that sounds a little crazy, but if you can just appreciate and have gratitude for the anxiety you have, not that anxiety is fun, fear, worry, panic is not fun, but it means that you care. It means that you're there. It means that you're able to experience. Just appreciate and be with anxiety. And try to drop the expectation of anxiety ever going away. Maybe you're somebody who's just going to live with anxiety your whole life. I'm not saying that that's fun nor that you want it, but if you can just be with anxiety, you understand that all these emotions as they arise come together for a period of time and then cease to exist. The Buddhist teachings on impermanence. But you're dealing with anxiety and you've quickly jumped to, and it's very difficult via, typed words, but from what I'm reading, it sounds like you've jumped to, I've had anxiety and I'm going to have this the rest of my life and it's never going away. So now you're just miserable. That's what I'm getting from these words. Just have anxiety. Just stay there. Just be anxious. And begin to explore the anxiety. Because I'm hearing anger and frustration on top of your anxiety. And that doesn't help anxiety go away, it just makes you angry and frustrated. Another question here, it says, following up on the first question, what are the tools to cultivate compassion and wisdom? Maybe it's always with the very easy questions. So, as the Buddha taught, just to kind of put it into context a little bit, the Four Noble Truths, life is filled with suffering, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. It's called dukkha. It's the first noble truth. The second one is the cause. Greed, anger, ignorance. We overcome greed with generosity. We overcome anger with compassion. We overcome ignorance with wisdom. This is the second noble truth. And so this is really what you're asking about, which is how do we cultivate wisdom and compassion? And for me, as a practitioner, I don't wake up and think to myself, how am I going to embody endless compassion today? I don't wake up and think, how am I going to embody endless wisdom today? Like this pure ultimate body of compassion and wisdom is not abiding in me anytime soon. But the opposite of compassion is the anger. The opposite of wisdom is the ignorance. So if I can have less anger and be aware of my anger, by default, less anger means more compassion. If I can have less ignorance, right? Show of hands, how many of you know when you're doing something really stupid that you shouldn't do? Right? Yeah, I saw half the hands up before I can finish the question. Right? Most of us know. Right? Sometimes we're like, I'm not really sure. But very often throughout our day, I'm not talking again about life-threatening things, but very often throughout our day, we know when we're doing something, we just shouldn't do it. Do those things less. By default, that is a greater sense of wisdom. The ignorance that we bring into our lives and the lives of those around us. Do those things less. So again, it's not to me about targeting compassion and targeting wisdom and trying to achieve a high level of that. It's by being aware of the ignorance and the anger and doing those things less. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Can you explain some of the iconography of Buddhism, like what we see in the temple here?
Yeah. So the question is around the iconography in Buddhism. There's a lot of it. And I'll point out a few in a minute, but just to kind of give you a general idea, they all represent something. I'm not even just talking about here, but all of it obviously represents something different. And I think it's important, especially, we started the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhism to local folks, meaning predominantly people who did not grow up Buddhist, right? Maybe one person in here that grew up Buddhist, if that. Maybe two people in here, probably 1.5, that would even identify themselves as Buddhist, right? Meaning the people here are not Buddhist. They don't come here to become Buddhist. We're not trying to make them Buddhist, and they don't leave Buddhist, right? The reason I mention all that is we come from other religions where there are images, iconography, statues, things like that, and they have heavy meaning, and those meanings get kind of, instilled upon us as we grow up. And then very often people find Buddhism later in their life for various reasons, and they're like, wait, Buddhists also have statues? They also have ritual? It's also a religion? And that shocks people. Because they're like, no, I don't want any of that stuff. I just want to be peaceful. Well, great, be peaceful. But let's also look at the fact that which is the nature of your question, there's 2,500 years of iconography within Buddhist teachings. Anyone know the very first image of the Buddha that ever existed? I haven't actually shared this in a while, so anyone got a guess? Very first thing, because the Buddha as a human was very clear. You can tell how people eventually listened to him, right? He was very clear he never wanted statues made of him. He said, I'm just a human, not a god. I don't want statues. Everybody ignored him, obviously, right, for 2,500 years. But the very first image was, anyone know? I see a hand. No. Good guess, though. Yeah. Say again?
A rock?
A rock? No. It was feet. The very first image of the Buddha that represented Buddhism was simply his feet. Because what they wanted to show was that Buddhism was something that was going to spread. And the image of the feet represented the movement, the walking, the moving of Buddhism, right? And so a whole history of iconography there. But specifically to the ones, last thing I wanted to say, the reason I really brought all that up is when we, in Buddhist practice, those of you who have like a formal ritual practice, things like that, when you see people bowing or anything like that to the statues, depending upon the culture, but it's not so much about praying to them that they're going to save you or fix you or heal you, right? Buddha died 2,500 years ago. He cannot help you right now. You're on your own. But when we, and I'll talk about them, say with this one, which is great diligence, right? This is Samantapadra. I'll talk about it in a little more detail in a second. But the idea is that when we do offerings to them, whether it's a bow, whether it's offering water, flowers, or rice, or incense, or food, or whatever it is, fruit, when we do offerings to them, what we're really working on doing is invoking, bringing about that diligent effort that's within us that's required to help us suffer less. So if I do my formal bows or prostrations to Samantapadra, I'm not looking for him to come down and give me more diligence. I'm looking at him as a reflection that says, Jeff, you need to work harder at not being an idiot. Right? So that's how, for me as a practitioner, how I use the statues and the images within my Buddhist practice. So Samantapadra represents great diligence. The 6 tusks are representing what's called the Paramitas in Buddhism. Paramita translates to perfection. It's not about being perfect, but these are the 6 practices of the Bodhisattva, the enlightened being practice, which is generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom.
I mean, is that a representation of Buddha?
No,
Or
that's what's called a bodhisattva. The word bodhi is enlightened, sattva is being. Think of them as angels. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the question for most people is like, well, who were they? Did they live? Were they real people? I spent years pondering all that, and then I realized, you know what? Even if the Buddha never existed, it doesn't matter. If it's one big story, if it's all made up, if the Buddha said it, if Donald Duck said it, so what? Right? So I don't get into the whole, were bodhisattvas real people, were they, you can spend enough time Googling all that and you come to your own opinions. But to me, bodhisattvas are enlightened beings. Ultimately, I do believe in them, but that's just my own personal practice, right? And so this is great diligence. You got some nice hair there. If that hair was on fire, would you sit and let it burn? No. You'd be looking for a pool or a hose or something to put it out pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dogen, the great Zen master, would say practice ending suffering is if your hair was on fire. We go through our day and we're like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to keep suffering. I'll wait till Tuesday to do a meditation. I'll wait till Wednesday to go to my, loving kindness practice. I'll be mean all day, but then I'll go to loving kindness and I'm good. So practice loving kindness, compassion as if your hair was on fire. Be diligent. All right? Don't be lazy. This is Manjushri. This represents great wisdom. This is the Bodhisattva of wisdom. The teaching here is that, anyone ever been in a cage with a crazy wild lion? Probably not, right? Doesn't sound pretty, wouldn't be fun. But the metaphor is that the ignorance that we have, which we work on overcoming with wisdom, is like the mind being in a cage with the crazy lion, or us being in a cage with a crazy wild lion, and we're just getting destroyed. And that's what we're doing to our mind and our hearts constantly. And so, with the practice of ultimate wisdom, what did Manjushri turn this crazy wild lion into? Nice little playful cat, right? So if our minds were more like playful cats and not crazy lions, we would stop harming ourselves and harming others, right? The one in the middle here, this is Kuan Yin, or Avalokiteshvara. You'll hear different names, different languages for all of them. But her name means hearer of the world's cries. So she hears all the suffering in the world and pours out compassion to heal. The Dalai Lama, they say, is the endless rebirth or reincarnation of the Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. Again, hearer of the world's cries. So she hears all the suffering in the world and then often is seen holding or pouring out a vase of compassion. Right there, that second tanka right there between the two windows, that's also Kuan Yin or Avalokiteshvara, but in a four-armed Tibetan form known as Chenra Zig. So each culture, to your question, in Japanese they'll call her Kanon, Vietnamese they'll call her Quan Chinese Kuan Yin, Tibetan you'll hear Avalokiteshvara, Chenra Zig, and then in the very back corner there is another version of Kuan Yin. We like Kuan Yins around here. And that's known as the thousand-armed Kuan Yin. The story there is that she was pouring out so much compassion that she exploded, so the Buddha came in and gave her 1,000 arms and 11 heads so she could continue to aid and heal and spread compassion. So that's a short story. Yeah, endless. Just Google Buddhist iconography.
What's that kind of scary one?
Yeah, I was hoping you'd ask that question. So the question was, what's that scary one? That's Siddhartha himself.
Oh.
That's you.
Memento mori.
That's you. So this is, often people, it's kind of scary. This one like freaks kids out, you know. Looks like he needs a sandwich. Often people say, who's the hungry guy up there? Who's the scary guy? Who's the skinny guy, right? This is Siddhartha Gautama. I'll close with this story. When Siddhartha, who was a prince, when he left home at the age of 29, he roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years. And during this journey, as yogis and Hindus, they thought that if they overcame attachment to physical form, that they would end suffering. So it's said that they lived on 1 grain of rice a day. They starved themselves, basically. They would stand on one leg for weeks at a time, hang from a tree for weeks at a time. They were doing things to overcome their attachment to physical form. Because at that time, they thought that's how one would awaken. You could become enlightened if you were no longer attached to the physical body. So it said that he was so skinny you could take your fingers front to back, they would touch, and that was it. So they came to a riverbed, and there was a woman there offering some food. And it was a bowl of kanji, porridge rice. And they were like, no, we don't eat. And Siddhartha said something to the effect of, well, I'm hungry, right? And so he says, the story is that he took the bowl and he put it in the stream. And he kind of announced, if the bowl goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. So he put the bowl that goes against the stream, picks it up, and he starts to eat. All his buddies were like, you food eater, you sellout, you traitor, They left him. He started to eat, and he regained his physical strength. This is where you introduce in Buddhism the middle path, the teachings on the middle path. Finding a balance. Not just with what we eat, but with the food we buy, the clothes we wear, the amount of stuff we consume, balance with our mental, emotional health, just everywhere in our lives. So often we're out of balance. We don't have enough time right now, it's the end of the night for me to get into that, but there are so many areas in our lives where we're often out of balance. So find where you're out of balance and work on finding a middle path. But that's in essence what it represents. Let me finish and then we'll come back. So starts to eat. Those 5 guys left him. At the age of 35, he sat down under the Bodhi tree, and there's a tapestry above the exit sign on that door. And that's where these 5 guys that left him, they saw him. And they said, there's Siddhartha. Looks like he's figured something out. We'll go sit with him. And he sat for 21 days. He understood the nature of all suffering was in his mind. Right? He taught the Four Noble Truths. And they sat down and they said, tell us what you've learned. So he taught them the cause of suffering was greed, anger, ignorance. And the way out was the Eightfold Path. Views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, all that stuff you've already Googled. Right? It's all there. And he taught that, and they said, you have awakened. We will call you the Buddha. The Buddha just means the awakened one. So they called him the Buddha. They became his first 5 disciples. He taught for 45 years, and at 80 he died. Question then is, why this statue? When we started the temple 18 years ago, we were not Buddhas. We're still not Buddhas, right? I mean, in a way, we're all Buddhas, but, technically speaking. We were not trying to become these enlightened beings. We were this guy. That's why when I said, this is you, this is us. Instead of us sitting with these like enlightened Buddhas that were trying to become these, enlightened beings, we were physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death. So we sit with the emaciated Buddha. This was always our main Buddha. It still is. as a reminder that if this dude was near death and figured it out, that was motivating and inspiring to us. That if we sit with him, it forces us to sit with ourselves and see where we are out of balance. Go ahead, sorry, cut you off.
So why the pudgy Buddhas that we see?
So I will close on this thought, right? Why the let me quote that for those who didn't hear it. Why the pudgy Buddha, right? I've heard a lot of things. I've never heard pudgy. I hate to break it to you. You all know Santa Claus isn't real, right? Any kids here? Santa Claus is not real. Sorry, no, I just shattered it for you. Easter Bunny. Sorry. The pudgy Buddha. The happy Buddha, the big belly Buddha, the one you rub at the belly for good luck, the one that's at all the casinos that you've thrown all your money at because you think you're going to win, right? Not the Buddha. His name was Hotai. He was a monk in China about 1,000 years ago. The name Hotai, H-O-T-E-I, literally means bag carrier. He carried a bag of stuff, gifts and toys and presents. He was always jolly and happy and smiling and giving stuff away. Sound familiar? Right? So somehow, going back to the question about, iconography in the feet, Western culture, the first image that started to spread into Western culture was images of this guy. I'm convinced that Western countries were ruined for years thinking that Buddha was some big pudgy dude floating in the sky because of that statue. He was a monk in China, not the Buddha. But as I always say to my nice, sweet Jewish mother, it makes her smile so it doesn't even matter. Rub the belly, not the head. It said if you rub the head, it's bad luck. Just, in case you're asking.
There's some downstairs for sale.
There are some downstairs, yes. In fact, years ago, which is funny, a woman came in. We were at the old Buddha Free location. A woman came in, and she walked in and started rubbing the head of the Hotai, right? The big belly guy. And I'm just trying to help her out. And I'm like, hey, if you're looking for good luck, you don't rub the belly. You don't rub the head. You got to rub the belly. She was pissed. I got like the nastiest Yelp review because I told a woman that it was bad luck to rub the head of the Buddha. We got like 0 stars because I told her. I'm not even kidding. Yeah. So there's like one 0-star review bashing. I think she called me Steve. So some guy, Steve, if you read that, that's me. And I said, don't. She didn't love my energy because I told her don't rub the head of the Buddha. It can't be perfect, I'm going to close on that. There is one question here. Simple response, just for sake of time. How can I deal with the guilt of not having gotten into meditation earlier in life when I was initially recommended the practice for help? I wanted to help myself, but was a skeptic. Well, you're not now, and you're in it now, so get over it, right? We're out of time, so that's my answer. You can leave me a 1-star review if you want. But the reality is, don't be upset that you got into it too late. Be glad that you got into it now. Because you could be going another 10 years not doing it. And then you'd be looking back another 10 years and say, man, I should have done that shit earlier. Just be glad you're in it now. It's never too late to start. And, Buddhism being into the whole cycle of rebirth, you got endless lives ahead of you, so you're fine. All right, so we'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. And to Natalia and Jim during their suffering this time. And to Corey as well. All right, before y'all head out, our Dharma Bum host Eddie has a few announcements, and while Eddie is coming up, every night we have typically 2 hosts. Our Wednesday night host is going to be gone for about a month, which means we're looking for somebody else to train to help on Wednesdays. So if you like coming on Wednesdays, if you want to come on Wednesdays about twice a month, and do what Eddie is about to so masterfully do, you too can have a clipboard and a badge and do this announcement. So if you want to come on Wednesday nights and host, let me know. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Jeff. Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Eddie.